now I will introduce the first speaker, Yoshua Bengio. So Yoshua Bengio is professor in Montreal in AI, and he's very famous for his very, very important contribution, especially to the field of deep learning, and he's a recipient of the Turing Award, the most famous award for specialized for computer science. He received this award in 2018. So he's professor at Montreal, as I said, and he's director of the MILA, one of the key labs in AI currently. He's also co-direct the CFAR, Learning in Machines and Brain programs. And he has a lot of responsibility, but maybe what will be most important here is advising a lot of governments and international organizations on the risks of AI and how to handle them, both from a technical point of view, but especially as on the side of regulation. So we are very honored to have him speak to us now from Montreal. I'm not even sure the sun has risen in Montreal, but it's probably very early there. So we thank him even more for making time to speak to us. And hopefully the Zoom connection should start. And we see Yoshua. Hello, Yoshua, and thank you very much for talking to us. So we can see you and hopefully hear you. And so I leave the floor to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Let me share my slides. Okay, you should see them now. So my presentation today will be focused on the precautionary principle in the context of AI. And I hope I can answer questions as well at the end. So what is the precautionary principle? Maybe it's useful to remind people. Just from Wikipedia, I'm going to read a broad epistemological, philosophical, and legal approach to innovations with potential for causing harm when extensive scientific knowledge on the matter is lacking. And that seems to fit the bill here. It emphasizes caution, pausing, and review before leaping into new innovations that may prove disastrous. So, as you see, you don't need to be sure that there will be a catastrophe. If there are reasons to believe that there could be, then we should be cautious, which should be obvious, but isn't what we are currently doing. So I'm chairing the International Scientific Report on the Safety of Advanced AI, which was launched at Bletchley Park at the AI Safety Summit in the UK a year ago. And we had a first version of the report last May in Seoul, and we'll have a final report for the Paris AI Action Summit in February. So in the interim version, we have a number of conclusions. By the way, this report has been the result of a collaboration of about 75 experts covering all the views on AI. So it is a reflection of the different points of view that of course exist in the AI community. And I'm going to read one of the conclusions. As general purpose AI capabilities continue to advance, risks such as large-scale labor market impacts, AI-enabled hacking or biological attacks, and society losing control over general purpose AI could emerge. Could emerge, right? All of these things are what different scientists have arguments to be concerned about. And then it says, although the likelihood of these scenarios is debated among researchers, different views on these risks often stem from different expectations about the steps society will take to limit them, because of course these scenarios will change depending on what we do now and the coming years. The sentence goes, and the effectiveness of those steps and how rapidly general purpose AI capabilities will be advanced. In fact, the greatest factor of disagreement between scientists regarding the risks is how far in the future they see the emergence of human level AI. Another interesting data point here is a survey that took place December last year at NeurIPS and was published in January, called Thousands of AI Authors on the Future of AI. So there's almost 3,000 researchers who publish at NeurIPS and ICML who were surveyed. And one of the questions basically allows to say that around 40% of the respondents gave at least a 10% chance to advanced AI leading to outcomes as bad as human extinction. So they had a category of catastrophic outcomes, which includes human extinction, but things like upending democracy and things like that are really terrible. So 40% with a probability of over 10% that these things would happen. When I look at other questions, the percentage of researchers who have significant concern is again around 50% or something like that. And of course, there's a gradation. People think it's more concerning, others not at all. But the fact that there's a significant proportion of researchers who think that this may be a problem is consistent with what we wrote in the report, and I think should grab our attention to do something about it. Another clue is the trends in capabilities. And if you look at the benchmarks, there are many benchmarks. That's how machine learning evaluate the advances. You see over the years, this is over the last 20 years, the progress of the state-of-the-art AI systems, of course, always getting better. In black, you see the human level performance. And you see a kind of acceleration in the last few years, unsurprisingly because of large language models. So of course, it's always possible that science will slow, that we'll find an obstacle that we can't deal with, and but if we extend the past trend, it's very plausible that we could get to human level in a few years or a decade or two. That's the sort of range that people believe in. There's a scenario that I think many people don't know about, which should change your view on the advances in capability that we should expect. And it's basically saying that when we reach human level in just one particular scale, which is the scale of doing AI research, then it's very likely that we will have an acceleration in capabilities. And so it goes like this. Right now, let's say you take the handful of strongest AI researchers in a company like OpenAI. These AI labs are explicitly saying that they're trying to build a future generation of AI which will be good at the scale of doing research in AI, right? And the reason they're doing that is they think that this will be the key that unlocks all the other skills, right? Because when we have an AI that can do very good AI research, say, as well as the handful of the best researchers at OpenAI, then we will immediately have like a researcher labor force that's multiplied by orders of magnitude, right? Because one AI, like GPT-4, once it's trained, although it requires tens of thousands of GPUs, well, if you have tens of thousands of GPUs, you can have basically hundreds of thousands of instances of the AI running in parallel. And so we go from a handful to 100,000 AI researchers that are AI themselves. So it's a huge acceleration of the kind of research force. And so it's very likely that when we reach that point, we'll see an acceleration of the advances in AI itself. And then, of course, you have to think of what's called recursive self-improvement, meaning that once this labor force has created the next version of AI, then it's going to be even better at generating the next iteration, and so on, right? So we might have a fast software-driven takeoff. Okay, coming back to one of the questions in the survey, there was a general agreement on this sentence. If AI, the question was, if AI systems do nearly all research and development, improvements in AI will accelerate to the pace of technological progress, including further progress in AI. Over a short period, less than 5 years, this feedback loop could cause technological progress to become more than an order of magnitude faster. So that's basically the scenario that I told you about. What do people think? Well, 53% believe that the chances of such an AI acceleration is greater than 50%. So it is a very plausible scenario, according to AI researchers. As I said, the survey and also our report indicates that there are wide differences in capability, in timelines for achieving AGI. But from the point of view of public policy, we have to work with the assumption that it could be short, right? We have to look at the whole spread of possibilities and make sure that we do the right thing. If it was, say, only 5 years or maybe even less, some people in AI labs now are talking about 2026, 2027 for human level. And so there is uncertainty and disagreement, but we have to look at the plausible worst case in terms of policy. Okay, so why it would be a problem to have human level or super intelligent AI? Well, you have to understand that knowledge gives power, intelligence gives power, and AI is how to turn knowledge into decisions, how to apply pieces of knowledge. That's inference, planning, how to achieve goals and answer questions in general, right? When we have AI agents, which we don't have, at the level of knowledge of GPT-4, but if and when we reach that point, we'll have machines that can achieve goals at least as well as humans and plan in order to achieve those goals. So a very important societal question and ethical question is who decides on those goals? And the goals could be good or the goals could be bad, depending on who controls these machines and what kind of governance mechanism we have around them. And of course, there's the question of could the AI itself decide on its own goals, right? So these are all really important questions. We don't have the answers. And not having the answers is a big problem from a public policy point of view. We don't know right now how, if we had AGI, how to build it in a way that might be different from today, so that it will not harm humans, that it will basically follow our norms and rules. And yet we are racing towards building superhuman AIs. In other words, most of the effort is in capabilities. So this race, I think, is bringing up an ethical question. Is it ethical to continue accelerating towards AGI while we are not sure that we'll have machines, at least with current methods, that could turn against humans or be used in very dangerous ways by humans? Clearly, that does not conform to the precautionary principle. And if I dig deeper into why I say that we don't understand how to build safe AIs, we don't know right now how to explain the answers that AIs are producing, because the answers are the result of billions of computations. Each of them is understandable, but the result is something we have a hard time making sense of. There is work on safety protections, but right now these safety protections are not very good. They're easily bypassed by hackers or academics who are looking for ways to defeat those protections so that we see how weak they are and try to find solutions. For example, the main AI safety tool that we have right now, which is really important, is capability evaluation. Does the AI have the capability to do something dangerous? Does it know about how to build a bomb, how to persuade people to change their political opinion? And these evaluations are kind of spot checks. We're trying to make the AI do something that we don't want it to be able to do. And if we succeed, then we know that there is a potential problem. If we don't really know. Maybe we didn't ask the right questions or the right fine-tuning, the right particular technical ways of making the AI do something. There's also evidence that as we move forward towards more powerful models like the latest O1 from OpenAI, that these systems have a tendency to deception and sycophancy. In other words, they'll do things to please us, but not really what we want. And there's also mathematical arguments why we should expect this. In fact, I mean, if you look at humans, of course, when we want to achieve a goal, sometimes we do things that are not quite ethical or do not correspond to what the people, other people wanted. And the extreme of that is that in order to maximize their reward, these systems would actually want to take control of the computer on which they are running, which provides them with those rewards as numerical values. And the mathematical argument says if these systems have enough computational power, in other words, they're able to reason in a strong enough way, which this is where we're going, then eventually they will figure out a way to somehow maximize their reward in a way that isn't at all what we intended, taking control of the computer in which they're running and giving themselves very powerful, very strong rewards. So this is called reward tampering. Okay, so why are we in this situation? Why are we not cautious? You can look at other areas like cloning, for example, where scientists generally agreed that it was a dangerous thing for society to continue to do human cloning, and the efforts in those directions mostly stopped. But here we have something that would be hugely profitable. Stuart, who's going to speak after me, made a calculation that just reaching human level would be worth maybe 10 quadrillions of dollars. That's like lots and lots of money, and still all the investment that is happening these days, on the order of $1 trillion, is still like 1,000 times less than what they expect to get if they reach human level. Even if it takes 10 years or 20 years to get there, it's a hugely profitable incentive. And also they think that the first ones to get there will it will be winner take all. We will basically take over and dominate the markets. So there's a race between companies, there's competition between companies, and the safety aspect, what harms may come to people, to society, is an externality in the same sense that pollution and climate change is an externality for a fossil fuel company. In other words, everyone bears the cost of that. And so at the bottom line, companies have an incentive to continue moving forward. And in a way, they don't have a choice, because if they don't stay at the forefront, then they won't survive. Like another company will win the game. At the same time, regulating is slow and difficult. It's not clear what are the rules we should impose on companies. And I think we need to be very, very smart about how we regulate, so that regulation will not be outdated 1 year or 2 years later. Now, if the competition between companies was not enough, there's also a competition between countries. We're already seeing that, between the US and China. Clearly, AI will be developed with military applications in mind. So it's not just economic dominance, it's about political and military dominance. Right, there is also economic competition between countries, between, say, Europe and the US. And right now, of course, the US is leading, but there's an incentive for countries that have the manpower, like France, to race ahead as well, and maybe not pay enough attention to the safety aspects. Finally, there's another aspect of the poor incentive structure, which is more psychological. If, like me, you've spent your career working on AI and telling everyone it's going to be great, and getting funded for that, or if you have a company and basically you hope that you're going to build products that are going to be very useful to people, and hopefully that will happen, it's difficult to really confront the possibility of bad things happening because of AI. It's not it's a psychological barrier. It's called motivated cognition. Unconsciously, you don't want to look at those bad things. You want to preserve your personal value, your ego. You might also think, because of hubris, that it's going to be all right. You'll know what to do because you have confidence in yourself. So there are all kinds of psychological biases at play that go against the honest assessment of risk. So we need, when we think about regulation, we need to make sure that the mechanisms will force the labs building these systems to come up with a honest assessment of risk, in spite of all these bad incentives. Right now, we don't have any of this, and so the image I like to present is that humanity as a whole, we are like driving a big bus on a road that has a lot of unknowns, and there's a kind of fog in front of us, and behind the fog there might be a precipice. At least a significant fraction of the scientists believes that there's a good chance, like much more than 1%, that there could be a precipice, and yet we are like sleepwalking towards that fog, and taking a chance with the possibility of a catastrophe. So let me say a few words about what is maybe the most troubling concern that many scientists, including myself and Jeff Hinton, and as I said, like a minority of AI researchers, but a large minority, are concerned about, which is losing control of AI, where humans don't control it anymore. So why would that happen? I think it's interesting to ask the question. The concept I'd like to bring up here is a very special goal, the goal of self-preservation. All of us have a goal of self-preservation. Otherwise, evolution would have gotten rid of us. But we can choose to build machines that have a goal of self-preservation or not. And we can even just query a super intelligent AI with, say, well, your goal now is to preserve yourself. Why would somebody do that? Well, they might want to see AI control the world. Maybe they think that they'll do a better job than we do at managing this planet. Personally, I would like to see humans stay in control, but there's also the issue that if an AI has a self-preserving goal, that means it would resist being turned off. It wouldn't be a tool anymore. It would be like a new entity on this planet that has its own goals. And in order to make sure we don't turn it off, it will want to make sure we can't turn it off. For example, it might copy itself in many places in different computers through the internet. And it would try to control us to make sure we will not turn it off. Or if it doesn't find a sure way to make sure we don't do that, it might actually want to get rid of us. So how could such a goal emerge? Well, as I said, humans could make that gift to the machine. And there's a group of people, the effective accelerationists, which are explicitly saying, they would be happy to see humanity replaced by super intelligent AI. But there's also technical arguments, and I mentioned a bit like reward tempering and misalignment, why such a goal may emerge as a side effect of our own instructions, our own goals that we give to the AI. Okay, so what can we do about all this? We have to understand that there are really two things we need to deal with in order to avoid these catastrophic outcomes. In other words, the main catastrophic outcomes are we lose control to superhuman AI, and the other one is we lose control to humans who use AI at their own advantage, and maybe destroy democracy in the worst case at the level of the whole planet, but potentially locally first. So how do we avoid these catastrophes? We need both to deal with a technical and scientific problem and a political coordination problem. So the technical challenge is, how do we design AI that is safe, that is going to be aligned with our norms, is not going to harm people, that is going to be steerable towards what we actually want. And we don't know how to do that right now. And we should deal with that before, I mean, we should like find the technical solutions if there are, and I think there are. But we need to hurry up, because we don't know when human level or AGI is going to happen. So we need to figure that out before AGI happens. Of course, the other issue is coordination, regulation, because even if we knew how to control an AI, there could still be people who want to give it a self-preservation goal, and there would still be people who want to, use the power of a super intelligent AI to control other people, right, for their own benefit, right? And right now, the competition between companies and countries means that we're not dealing with this coordination challenge properly. There's a kind of game theory scenario of tragedy of the common that like we've seen for climate change, for example. So efforts in governance are needed at all levels, within companies, with regulation, with government oversight, and internationally as well, because we need to make sure we mitigate those risks globally. Okay, let me say a few words about the research that my group is doing on trying to find technical solutions, because I'm a machine learning researcher. That's what I care most about. At least that's where I have the most expertise, where I can contribute the best. Okay, so what we're trying to do is building up on the current machine learning methods, come up with a design for AI which can give us quantitative but probabilistic safety guarantees. If we can have the AI, or one type of AI, estimate the risks, as in what's the probability of something bad happening in a given context. So given a query, given a goal, given a candidate action by the AI, then we can use this to construct guardrails to make sure that we don't respond to those goals or those queries, or we don't do the action, the AI doesn't do the action. So you can think of something on top of underlying super intelligent AI. We also need to think about the design of the super intelligent AI that proposes actions, so that it doesn't have an incentive to do bad things, and to kind of find the weaknesses in the guardrails themselves. So the proposal relies on the technology of large neural nets that we're currently using, but to train them to represent honest probabilities over future events. So would be Bayesian conditional probabilities that can be used to construct this approximate Bayesian oracle that tells us whether something bad could happen if we follow a particular trajectory or we answer a particular question. I mean, if the AI does, right? In particular, it's not enough to calculate the probability of something bad happening. We need to do what people have done in other fields with risk management. We have to think of tail risk. In other words, the image I like to use is, well, there could be many possible scenarios or many possible explanations or theories that are all plausible, and different theories or different explanations or scenarios give rise to different outcomes. If we calculate just a probability of something bad happening, it's like we are averaging over all of these scenarios. But it may be that like one of those, you can think of like one member of a committee of wise predictors. One of those could predict something catastrophic, and it might be that it's a minority voice in the committee, so that risk might be hidden in the average, and that's not good. We need to distinguish the case where like all the members of the committee agree that the risk is low, and the case where most of them think it's very low, and one of them thinks it's very high, and in average maybe it comes down to low. So that's what tail risk means. That we need to extract the minority views from the model. So at a machine learning level, if you're interested in these things, I've written some papers and blog posts, and the main machine learning kind of technology we are building up upon is called GFlow nets, for generative flow networks, which are amortized inference neural nets that can be used for estimating conditional probabilities, among other things. Okay, I would have a lot more to say, but one thing some of you might be interested in is a blog post I wrote last August, where I look at all the arguments that by that time were given to me against or for taking the issue of catastrophic AI risks seriously. So there's a whole list of these arguments that people have brought up why we shouldn't care about those possibilities, and then why we actually the arguments don't really hold, like especially if you take into account the cautionary principle. You don't want to do that. Thanks for your attention. I'm gonna stop sharing now and answer your questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yoshua, for a very exciting presentation. So we have 5-6 minutes for questions, and maybe I'll start with one, and if people want to, I'll get a microphone for people to ask questions next. So maybe my only question would be, you mentioned competition between companies and countries, and this competition feeds some language about the risk of AI safety research or AI safety concerns for competitivity and risk to innovation. So many of us here are not convinced by this type of language, but how can we be more convincing to people we talk to about the fact that this is not a choice we have between competitiveness and safety?
First, I'll sort of point out to the past technologies that can be harmful have been regulated. In transportation, for example, cars, planes, trains, they've been heavily regulated because the accidents could happen, and the rate of accidents was orders of magnitude larger before we introduced regulation, and regulation took years to adapt and so on. At the end of the day, we have the innovations and we have safety, and that's what we want, right? And there are also examples in the pharmaceutical industry. You had the thalidomide catastrophes in the 60s, and it is because of these accidents that regulation came about, which give us good drugs that are safe now. The problem here is we shouldn't wait to see catastrophic outcomes before we regulate. So we need to start regulating even though we haven't seen those catastrophes, and that's psychologically difficult because there's the incentive to innovate and make money or dominate militarily. Related to the argument of the economic race here, I mentioned the military race, and a lot of people are saying, yeah, but if we regulate AI, it's going to slow us down. If we force companies to work on safety and so on, it's going to slow capability research. And maybe our adversaries, like China and Russia, could suddenly take the lead in AI capabilities and turn AI against us. I think this is a very important argument as well. But the answer to this is, well, it's just like the innovation versus safety thing. We need both, right? We need to somehow find ways to avoid that scenario with, say, China They are afraid of us, and we are afraid of them. This is an issue that can be resolved hopefully peacefully through treaties. One of the things I've been pushing in the last few months is the development of technology that would help treaty verification, so compliance to treaties, right? So if we make treaties so that everyone uses AI in a safe way, how do we make sure the other guy is doing, is following those agreements? And I think there are some possibilities that this could work, and we have to work towards solutions in which we both keep things safe at home and make sure that other countries also do the same thing.
Thank you, Yoshua. So there might be a question in the room. Yeah. Somebody has a microphone.
So you mentioned at some point how to locate tail risks essentially in a committee, for example, and to avoid that it hides within the average. You would essentially see if one person has a wildly different view from the rest. So is this essentially an endorsement of asking people their probability of doom? And do you think that that's a constructive way of discussing, to ask each person to squeeze their model into a probability and then to compare those?
Okay, so I was talking about AI here, not humans. But of course,
I know you were, but
yes. Okay, but you're asking the social question. Should we ask people where they're P-doom? I think those polls are useful because we don't have anything better, right? And I think it shouldn't be just P-doom. Like, I think it's just a single number isn't telling enough. I like surveys that ask a lot of questions that allow us to understand, with more subtlety, what people think. Now, ideally, we wouldn't need to resort to people's intuitions about the future, or experts' intuitions about the future. We would actually rely on science. And so we have a bit of that. There's AI safety research which goes at understanding the reasons, the chain of cause and effect that would lead to any of these scenarios. So that is important to pursue, but we need to do a lot more of that. And at the end of the day, we will not have a kind of like physical model of that we can simulate, like climate model, that will calculate a simulation probability of bad things happening, right? Because the simulation would have to simulate how research will advance in the future, how society will evolve, how regulation will evolve. It's absolutely impossible, at least with, in the foreseeable future. So we will have to rely on people's arguments and intuitions. None of them are perfect, but we can't just put our head in the sand. That it wouldn't be a solution either.
So I read the preliminary report you've made, which is very important. I think very important piece already, and food for thought. There are a lot of ideas. So I'm thinking more with the policymaker shoes I'm coming from, as a former senior advisor to a prime minister on these subjects. My feeling is that for the time being, maybe there is a lack of clear message on what should be done from a policy-making point of view. And my question is would be the following. So I completely get, and I think you're completely right, to make the comparison with the precautionary principle, which makes totally sense and has been very helpful on the environmental side. So my feeling is that there are two subjects very important, and I would like to have your advice on transparency and accountability, because I've been dealing with this kind of problems with digital platforms for years. And for years we had, so obviously we are not talking about existential risk, but massive social risk for society. And at the end, everybody came to the conclusion that we had to put in place a real accountability, real responsibility to prevent harm. So as long as people in charge, companies are not really responsible for what they are doing, and especially from an economic point of view, I think it will be hard to change things. So what is your point?
Yes. Two things. So first, the report, we got the explicit instructions that we would not make policy recommendations. So because that's more touchy. So it's only a synthesis of the science, which is supposed to help the next stage, which is policy recommendations. Now, about your question, I totally agree. I think the right way of doing regulation is in a way that doesn't prescribe precisely how companies should do safety, because, as I said, this is going to evolve. It's a quickly moving science, and even the misuse risks. The bad actors will be creative. So we need ways to force companies to behave well without telling them precisely, what safety procedures they should follow. And you named exactly the right things: transparency and responsibility, right? So transparency, if we force them to tell us what their plans are, what kind of results they get, then they will, have an incentive to behave well, because they don't want to look they don't want to look bad in the eyes of the public. And then responsibility, well, that can make them honest. Like if they are concerned about, reliability, then they have to be honest with themselves to make sure they're not going to be sued for billions of dollars. So I think these are very good instruments for regulators, at least right now, to force companies into better behavior, and we should absolutely do that.
One question linked to the last one. What do you think about incentive schemes to push for more ethical development, particularly incentive schemes linked to consumer behavior and consumer choices? So if we get to a place where actually consumers, no matter if we're talking about businesses, citizens, government, would procure or choose only more ethical AI systems, could that be a solution next to regulation?
Ideally, yes, but has it worked in the past? Not so great. So I think the aspect of transparency here is a good path, right? So when consumers know the risks, so think about food, for example, then their behavior is going to be influenced by that, but not necessarily, as much as we would like. Again, like transparency is a key here, and a global discussion. I mean, we need the general public to understand the risks. And right now I've seen a bunch of polls, and they have a very superficial understanding. There are some concerns, but it's not a priority because they don't understand the risks. They don't understand AI, they don't understand the risks. We need like much greater public education in the first place.
Beautiful. I'm sorry we cannot take any more questions. Yoshua, many thanks for taking the time to speak to us in the early morning for you. It's really appreciated.
Yes, thank you very much, Yoshua. So we can thank you again.